I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Your brain is working right now to untangle every thought, every tension you've been carrying. But science shows the mind knows how to release. Tonight, you'll discover how letting go is written into your biology. And by the end, you'll understand why rest is never weakness. Welcome to Sleepy Mind Science. Wherever you are right now, lying down, covers pulled close, the day finally behind you, let that weight begin to settle. We'll journey through 100 gentle facts about the science of letting go, from the neurons that fire when you finally exhale, to the ancient brain systems that dissolve tension, to the quiet permission your body has always given you to release. This thoughtful journey through consciousness builds bridges between searching minds. A gentle subscribe helps another tired mind find this sanctuary, one sleepy soul at a time. Let yourself settle completely here. Feel your jaw unclench, your breath deepen naturally. You can let these thoughts drift past without holding them. Sense that soothing heaviness enveloping you, like your consciousness slowly dimming its brightness. Thoughts dissolving into the peaceful fog of approaching sleep, safe and undisturbed. Close your eyes and breathe deeply. You're resting in the quiet space where the mind remembers how to soften. Let your thoughts dissolve with each breath. And now we begin. The human brain processes roughly 70,000 thoughts per day. But neuroscientists at Harvard have found that the brain also has a built-in quieting mechanism, a network called the default mode network that, when you stop directing your attention outward, naturally begins to turn inward and slow. Letting go is not something you force. It is something that begins the moment you stop fighting. The brain, given half a chance, already knows the way towards stillness. Tonight, those 70,000 thoughts are allowed to thin, one by one, like leaves drifting from a tree that no longer needs to hold them. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for planning, worrying, and decision-making, begins to quiet its activity within minutes of lying down in a dark, quiet space. This is not a failure of the mind. It is the brain executing a deeply intelligent program. When the environment signals safety, the executive functions gradually hand over control to slower, older brain regions. You are not becoming less alert. You are becoming more ancient. Returning to a rhythm your nervous system has practiced for hundreds of thousands of years. The worried mind was always meant to rest. Cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, follows a natural daily curve called the diurnal rhythm. It peaks sharply in the first hour after waking, a phenomenon researchers call the cortisol awakening response, and then declines gradually throughout the day, reaching its lowest point around midnight. Your biology is already designed to let go of the day's urgency. The chemistry of release is not something you have to create. You only have to stop interfering with what the body is already doing right now. Your cortisol is falling. The science of tonight has already begun. The parasympathetic nervous system, often called the rest and digest system, is activated when you breathe slowly and deeply. A single slow exhale, longer than your inhale, directly stimulates the vagus nerve, the longest nerve in your body, which runs from the brainstem down through the heart and into the abdomen. This one act, a long, slow breath out, is a biological instruction to the entire body to lower its guard. Your exhale is not just air leaving. It is a message traveling from your lungs to your heart to your gut, saying the danger has passed. You can let go now. Psychological research has long distinguished between two types of mental effort: top-down processing, which is deliberate and controlled, and bottom-up processing, which is automatic and sensory. When you are exhausted, the brain preferentially shifts toward bottom-up processing. It begins to respond to the soft sensation of the pillow beneath your head, the warmth of blankets, the rhythm of your own breathing. Rather than continuing to analyze and plan, this is not your mind giving up. This is your mind making a wise choice. The intelligent brain, late at night, knows that sensation is more useful than strategy. Studies in affective neuroscience, the branch of science that studies the neural basis of emotion, have found that suppressing thoughts actually increases their frequency and intensity. The more a person tries not to think about something, the more that thought occupies mental space. This effect, first described by psychologist Daniel Wegner, is called ironic process theory. The science of letting go is, paradoxically, not about effort. It is about allowing. When you stop pushing thoughts away and simply observe them without attachment, the brain's threat response centers gradually stand down. The mind is not conquered by force. It opens like a hand unclenching. The amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure deep in the brain, is the organ most associated with fear, threat detection, and emotional reactivity. Neuroscientists at UCLA have shown that simply labeling an emotion, naming it in a word or two, significantly reduces amygdala activation. The act of quiet acknowledgement, of saying even silently to yourself, "I notice tension" or "I feel tired," creates a small but measurable shift in the brain's emotional landscape. You do not need to solve what you feel. You only need to name it gently. The brain, once heard, begins to quieten. Sleep researchers have identified a phenomenon called sleep drive, or process S, which is the brain's accumulation of adenosine throughout the day. Adenosine is a chemical byproduct of neural activity. The longer you stay awake, the more adenosine builds up, and the stronger your biological pressure to sleep becomes. This means that right now, after everything this day has asked of you, your brain is heavy with adenosine. The pressure to let go is not just psychological, it is chemical. It is enormous. Your body has been building toward this moment since the moment you opened your eyes this morning. Research from the University of California, Berkeley, shows that during REM sleep, the brain reprocesses emotionally charged memories. But it does so in the absence of the stress neurochemical norepinephrine. This means that sleep literally strips the sharp edges from difficult experiences. You do not carry the full weight of today into tomorrow. Sleep metabolizes the emotional residue of your experiences, leaving behind meaning without the sting. Every night that you rest, your brain is quietly doing the work of letting go on your behalf. Sleep is not the absence of processing. It is the most important processing of all. The glymphatic system, a recently discovered network of channels that surrounds the blood vessels of the brain, becomes dramatically more active during sleep. During waking hours, metabolic waste accumulates in brain tissue. During sleep, cerebrospinal fluid flows more freely through the glymphatic channels. flushing out toxins including beta amyloid, a protein associated with cognitive decline. The brain cleans itself at night. When you lie down and close your eyes, you are not merely resting. You are allowing a biological cleansing process to begin, one that cannot happen while you are awake, that requires your stillness, your release, your surrender to sleep. Emotional regulation research consistently shows that the ability to let go of negative affect, what psychologists call emotional recovery, is one of the strongest predictors of long-term mental well-being. People who recover more quickly from stress are not people who feel less. They are people whose nervous systems have learned to complete the stress cycle, to move through tension rather than hold it in place. Exhaustion is often not the feeling of having felt too much. It is the feeling of having held too much for too long. Tonight, the cycle is allowed to complete. The concept of cognitive diffusion, developed within acceptance and commitment therapy by psychologist Stephen Hayes, describes the practice of stepping back from thoughts, seeing them as mental events rather than facts. When you notice a thought as just a thought, a passing signal in the brain rather than a command to act, its power diminishes significantly. Diffusion is not distance. It is not numbness. It is clarity. The thought "I should have done more today" is not a truth. It is a sound the tired brain makes. You can hear it, note it, and let it drift past like weather. Neuroscientific studies using functional MRI have shown that the experience of forgiveness, letting go of perceived wrongdoing, activates regions of the brain associated with reward and social bonding, while simultaneously reducing activity in regions associated with threat and rumination. Forgiveness is not an abstract virtue. It is a measurable neurological state. When you release resentment, even quietly and partially, the brain's architecture shifts. You are not excusing what happened. You are freeing your own nervous system from the cost of carrying it. Letting go is, among many things, a biological act of self-care. Mindfulness research from John Kabat-Zinn's work at the University of Massachusetts Medical School has consistently shown that the simple practice of non-judgmental present moment awareness reduces activity in the S default mode network's ruminative regions. The mind that ruminates, that replays the past and rehearses the future, is a mind in a specific neural pattern. That pattern can shift. It does not require years of practice to begin. It requires only this noticing what is here, right now, without needing it to be different. The warmth of the bed, the quietness of the room, the soft pull of sleep already arriving. The autonomic nervous system has two primary branches: the sympathetic nervous system, which activates the fight or flight response, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which governs rest. These two systems are not simply opposites. They are in constant, dynamic dialogue. Heart rate variability, the subtle variation in time between heartbeats, is a measure of how fluidly this dialogue is happening. Higher heart rate variability is associated with better emotional regulation, greater resilience, and deeper sleep. Right now, as your breathing slows and your body stills, your heart rate variability is likely rising. The conversation between your two nervous systems is shifting toward peace. Research on the neuroscience of self-compassion, led by Kristin Neff at the University of Texas, has shown that treating oneself with the same kindness one would offer a struggling friend reduces cortisol, lowers inflammation markers, and increases feelings of safety and calm. Self-compassion activates the brain's caregiving system, the same neural pathways that light up when you comfort someone you love. When you are hard on yourself at the end of a long day, you are triggering threat responses in your own nervous system. When you soften toward yourself, even slightly, your body begins to exhale. Tonight, you are allowed to be kind to the one who is listening. The neuroscience of gratitude offers a surprising finding. Gratitude practice does not require significant events. Studies by Robert Emmons at the University of California, Davis, show that noticing small, specific things, the texture of a blanket, the fact that the body is breathing without effort, the simple presence of quiet, activates the ventral tegmental area and nucleus accumbens, core parts of the brain's reward circuitry. Gratitude is not a luxury. It is a neurological redirect. When the mind is invited to notice what is present rather than what is absent, the architecture of worry begins to soften. There is always something small enough to hold gently tonight. Epigenetic research, the study of how experience changes which genes are expressed without changing the DNA itself, has shown that chronic stress can alter the expression of genes involved in inflammation and immune function. But this process is also reversible. Periods of deep rest, practices of emotional release, and states of safety and connection have been shown to shift epigenetic markers back toward health. The body keeps score, as trauma researcher Bessel van der Kolk has described. But the body also heals. Every night of true rest is a quiet form of repair at the cellular level. You are more recoverable than you know. Psychologists describe a phenomenon called decision fatigue, the finding that the quality of a person's decisions deteriorates after a long period of continuous choosing. The prefrontal cortex, which manages judgment and willpower, depletes its neurochemical resources across the day. By evening, the brain is genuinely less equipped to make good decisions, hold complicated thoughts, or resist impulses. This is not weakness. This is neuroscience. The exhausted mind, at the end of the day, is doing exactly what it is supposed to do, signaling that it has done enough. The correct response to decision fatigue is not more effort. It is sleep. Research into the phenomenology of worry, what it actually feels like from the inside, has found that worry is often experienced as a form of mental control. Worrying about something feels, paradoxically, as if it is doing something about the problem. This is called the metacognitive belief that worry is useful. But cognitive neuroscience consistently shows that chronic worry activates the threat system without ever reaching resolution. Worry is a loop, not a path. When you recognize that tonight's worries are not solving anything, that the mind is cycling rather than moving, you are one recognition away from choosing to set them down. The insula, a region of the brain folded deep within the cortex, plays a central role in interoception, the perception of internal body states. When you turn your attention to the physical sensations of your body, the weight of your limbs, the temperature of your skin, the slow movement of your chest, you activate the insula and simultaneously reduce activity in the regions associated with rumination and future-oriented thinking. The body is a present tense experience. The mind is where the past and future live. When you move your attention from mind to body, you step out of time, and time is where worry lives. Brain imaging studies have consistently found that the neural activity during the hypnagogic state, the transitional period between wakefulness and sleep, resembles a loosening of the usual connective patterns between brain regions. Thoughts become more fluid, images more spontaneous. The tight boundaries between self and environment soften. This is not disorientation. It is the brain releasing its daytime architecture. The experience of drifting, that pleasant, floaty feeling of the mind beginning to unhitch from wakefulness, is a measurable neurological event. You are not losing your grip. You are finding the place where the grip was never necessary. Positive psychology researcher Martin Seligman identified a concept called learned helplessness, in which repeated experiences of uncontrollable stress lead an organism to stop attempting to change its situation, even when change becomes possible. But neuroscience has also documented learned helpfulness, the opposite pattern, in which environments of safety, agency, and support recondition the nervous system toward engagement and hope. Every time you allow rest without guilt, you are teaching your nervous system that safety is real. The brain learns from repeated experience. Tonight's rest is not a break from your life. It is evidence your nervous system is gathering about whether the world is safe. The concept of psychological flexibility, the ability to move between different emotional, cognitive, and behavioral responses depending on what a situation calls for, is one of the most robust predictors of mental health identified in modern psychological research. Flexibility is not indecision. It is not weakness. It is the opposite of being rigidly locked into one way of responding. And it begins with this: the willingness to let one moment end and another begin. Letting go is not a single event. It is a practice of flexibility that happens dozens of times a day. And most beautifully, once, when you finally allow sleep to arrive. Neuroplasticity, the brain's lifelong ability to reorganize itself in response to experience, means that the patterns you practice, you strengthen. The neural pathways involved in worry, rumination, and tension are real physical structures, but so are the pathways involved in release, calm, and rest. The more you practice letting go, even in small ways, even imperfectly, the more accessible those pathways become. The brain you wake with tomorrow will be shaped by the quality of the rest you allow yourself tonight. Neuroplasticity is not only about learning new things, it is also about unlearning the weight of carrying too much, one night at a time. Let your body feel heavier now. Notice the weight of your shoulders against whatever surface is holding you. That surface has been holding you this whole time, without effort, without asking anything of you. Let your arms grow still. Let your legs soften completely. Somewhere in your chest, feel the quiet space between your heartbeats. In that space, there is no thought. There is only the rhythm that has been keeping you alive without your permission, without your worry, without your help. You are being held. You always have been. Let that be enough. Just for now. Rest here. Breathe here. Dissolve a little into the warmth. The stress response system, often called the fight or flight response, was designed for short-term, acute threats, the kind that resolve quickly, either because you escape or because the predator gives up. The system was never designed to run continuously. When the stresses of modern life, financial worry, relational conflict, professional pressure, keep the stress system activated across days and weeks. The body begins to experience a state researchers call allostatic load. This is the cumulative biological cost of sustained stress. Rest is not indulgence. It is the necessary biological reset that prevents the accumulation of damage. Sleep is how the human body was designed to survive a difficult life. Research by psychologist James Pennebaker at the University of Texas has shown that expressive writing, spending even 15 minutes writing honestly about difficult emotions, significantly reduces physiological stress markers, improves immune function, and leads to better sleep in the weeks that follow. The act of articulating difficult experience, of moving it from unformed sensation into language, appears to help the brain process and integrate what it has been carrying. You do not have to write tonight, but knowing this, that the mind is capable of releasing what it has held, when given the right conditions, may be enough. Your thoughts are not permanent. They are processable. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio has described what he calls somatic markers, the way the body stores the emotional residue of past experiences as physical sensations. Tension in the shoulders, tightness in the jaw, a low hum of unease in the chest. These are not imaginary complaints. They are real physiological signals, encoded in muscle tone and autonomic activation. The body holds what the mind has not yet fully processed. But the same system works in reverse. When the body is allowed to soften, to release, to become warm and still, it sends signals upward to the brain that the processing is no longer necessary. The body can lead the mind into rest. Sleep architecture, the structure of a full night's sleep, moves through multiple cycles of NREM and REM sleep, each approximately 90 minutes long. In the early cycles, deep NREM sleep dominates, during which the brain consolidates factual and procedural memories. In the later cycles, REM sleep lengthens, and emotional memory processing intensifies. This means that the sleep you get in the second half of the night is disproportionately responsible for emotional recovery. Every hour of sleep you allow yourself tonight is contributing to that process. The brain does not need you to be conscious to do its most important work. It only needs you to stay. Research on the neuroscience of meaning-making has shown that the brain naturally seeks narrative, the sense that events follow a coherent story with direction and purpose. When a person's sense of meaning is disrupted by grief, by failure, by overwhelming circumstances, the default mode network increases its ruminative activity, as if searching for the story thread it has lost. Rest does not restore meaning directly, but it restores the neural resources needed to find meaning again. The exhausted brain cannot tell its own story clearly. The rested brain can. Tonight's sleep is not time away from your story. It is the condition that allows your story to continue. The body's melatonin system, governed by the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the hypothalamus, is exquisitely sensitive to light. Even small amounts of blue wavelength light in the hours before sleep can suppress melatonin production and delay the onset of the biological night. Darkness, in the most literal sense, is a requirement for the brain's release into sleep. When the environment goes dark and quiet, melatonin begins to rise, body temperature begins to fall, and the stage is set for sleep to arrive naturally. The conditions for letting go are not complicated. They are ancient. Darkness, stillness. A surface that holds you. Everything you need is already here. Psychologist Susan Nolan Hoeksema spent decades studying rumination, the repetitive, passive dwelling on feelings of distress rather than engaging in active problem-solving. Her research consistently showed that rumination prolongs and intensifies negative mood, impairs concentration, and interferes with sleep. The solution is not to force positive thinking. It is to interrupt the loop through movement, through engagement with sensory experience, through the deliberate shift of attention, right now. The simple act of letting the body feel the weight of the bed, the coolness of the pillow, the sound of your own breathing, is not passive. It is an active interruption of the ruminative loop. You are doing something by doing nothing. Polyvagal theory, developed by neuroscientist Stephen Porges, proposes that the autonomic nervous system has not two states but three: a social engagement state of safety and connection, a mobilized state of fight or flight, and an immobilized state of shutdown and collapse. The social engagement state, characterized by a soft voice tone, relaxed facial expression, and gentle receptivity, is the state most conducive to learning, healing, and sleep. When you are held in an environment that feels safe, or when you imagine one, which the brain processes with remarkable similarity, the nervous system shifts toward its highest and most resourceful state. Safety is not a luxury. It is a biological requirement for rest. Research on the neuroscience of attention has found that the brain cannot sustain focused attention indefinitely. Ultradian rhythms, biological cycles that repeat approximately every 90 minutes throughout the day, include natural peaks and troughs of alertness and mental energy. At the low point of each ultradian cycle, the brain signals a need to rest through yawning, to a drop in concentration, and a slight decrease in motivation. These signals are often overridden in modern life, accumulating as fatigue across the day. By nighttime, those overridden signals have compounded. When you finally lie down, you are not choosing to be tired. You are allowing what was always true. Neuroscientific research on awe, the emotion evoked by experiences of vastness, complexity, or beauty that exceed the current frameworks of the mind, has shown that awe reliably quiets the regions of the brain associated with self-referential thought. When a person feels awe, the narrative self, the inner voice that narrates, evaluates, and worries, temporarily goes quiet. The mind expands and the ego softens. You do not need a mountain or a night sky to access this state. The vastness of the sleeping brain, its billions of neurons, its ancient rhythms, its quiet miracle of continued functioning, is itself a kind of awe, available right now. From exactly where you are lying, the neurochemistry of trust, the release of oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone, plays a significant role in the ability to rest. Research has shown that oxytocin reduces amygdala reactivity, lowers cortisol, and promotes parasympathetic nervous system dominance. Feeling safe with another person, or even recalling a memory of warmth and connection, can trigger oxytocin release and shift the nervous system toward calm. You are not alone tonight in the biological need for rest. Across the world, millions of exhausted people are lying in the dark as you are, breathing, releasing, letting the day end. That shared human act is its own form of connection. Studies of people who report high levels of psychological resilience, the ability to recover from adversity, consistently identify a common factor, the ability to accept what cannot be changed without being destroyed by it. This is not passive resignation. Acceptance, as defined in psychological research, is an active cognitive process of acknowledging reality without distorting it in either direction, neither minimizing nor catastrophizing. The exhausted mind often fights hardest against the things it cannot change. Tonight, the facts of this day are already fixed. They exist in the past, which is the one place where nothing more can hurt you. Accepting what is already over is one of the most powerful things you can do. Neuroimaging research has shown that the brain regions associated with physical pain and the regions associated with social rejection and emotional loss significantly overlap. This is why grief, loneliness, and the pain of difficult days feel genuinely physical, because to the brain, they partly are. Understanding this can do something subtle but real. It removes the layer of self-judgment. You are not weak for being tired. You are not overreacting for being heavy with feeling. Your nervous system is responding to real signals through real neural pathways. What you feel is not excessive. It is appropriate. And appropriate responses, when given the space to complete, eventually resolve. Research on the psychology of perfectionism has identified two distinct types: adaptive perfectionism, which drives toward growth, and maladaptive perfectionism, which is organized around the avoidance of failure and the fear of not being enough. Maladaptive perfectionism is strongly associated with sleep difficulties, specifically with the inability to stop reviewing the day for errors, omissions, and missed opportunities. If that voice is here with you tonight, speaking its familiar language of should and not enough, know this: it is a pattern, not a truth. It has a neuroscience, and neuroscience can be understood, worked with, and gently, over time, unlearned. Tonight, done is enough. Here is enough. You are enough. One of the most consistent findings in sleep science is that sleep effort, trying hard to fall asleep, paradoxically makes sleep harder to achieve. Hyperarousal theory proposes that insomnia is maintained by a state of elevated physiological and cognitive activation, in which the very act of monitoring one's sleep interferes with its arrival. Paradoxical intention therapy, a clinical technique that involves deliberately trying to stay awake while lying in bed, has been shown to reduce sleep-onset anxiety and improve sleep latency. The lesson the brain offers tonight is ancient and consistent the harder you hold. The further sleep moves, the softer you become, the closer it arrives. You're halfway through the night now. The day is further away than it was. Notice how much lighter you feel than when we began. There is nothing left to decide, nothing left to figure out. Just this breath in and this one out. Stay here. Stay soft. You're doing exactly what you need to do. The practice of radical acceptance, a concept developed by psychologist Marsha Linehan as part of dialectical behavior therapy, is built on a deceptively simple premise that suffering is the result not of pain alone, but of pain combined with resistance to pain. When you add resistance to an already difficult experience, you create a second layer of suffering on top of the first. Letting go is not pretending the difficulty wasn't real. It is releasing the argument with reality. the internal insistence that things should have been different. The day happened. It is over. Accepting that fully is not defeat. It is the most rational response available. Brain imaging studies have shown that compassion meditation, the deliberate practice of wishing well-being to oneself and others, produces measurable changes in the brain's insular and anterior cingulate cortex, regions involved in empathy and interoception. Compassion practice also increases activity in regions associated with positive emotion and decreases reactivity in the amygdala. This effect is not dependent on years of meditation experience. Even brief, sincere compassion toward oneself. The quiet acknowledgement that you tried, that you are tired, that you deserve rest, produces neurological shifts. The brain responds to kindness, including the kindness you choose to offer yourself right now. Research on the neuroscience of habits has shown that habitual behaviors are stored in the basal ganglia, a brain region that encodes routines and automates repetitive patterns of thought and action. This is why the habit of worry, the automatic turning toward anxiety at night, can feel so automatic and hard to interrupt. But habit research also shows that new patterns, practiced consistently in the same context, can become the brain's default. The context of lying down, of darkness, of the body becoming still. This can become reliably associated with release. Every time you practice letting go in this space, you are reinforcing a new habit of rest. The concept of ego depletion, the idea that willpower and self-control draw on a limited cognitive resource, has been extensively studied and debated in social psychology. What remains consistently supported is this: by the end of a long day of effort, striving, and self-regulation, the brain's capacity for effortful control is reduced. This means that the self-judgment and harsh inner commentary that often arrives at night is not the voice of your highest self. It is the voice of a depleted system. The wisest thing a tired brain can do is stop trying to evaluate itself and simply rest. Tomorrow's thinking will be clearer. Tonight's job is simpler. Psychophysiological research has documented what happens in the body during a genuine sigh, the involuntary deep breath that follows periods of shallow breathing or low-level stress. The sigh is a biological reset. It reinflates the tiny air sacs in the lungs called alveoli, which tend to collapse during quiet, shallow breathing, and restores efficient gas exchange. After a sigh, heart rate variability briefly increases, and the nervous system registers a small but real shift toward calm. The body sighs because it needs to. If you sigh right now, it is not a sign of sadness. It is your respiratory system performing a small act of maintenance. Let it. The prefrontal cortex, the region most responsible for conscious self-monitoring and self-criticism, is among the first areas of the brain to disengage as sleep approaches. This is why the transition into sleep is often accompanied by a gradual quieting of the inner critic. The self that judges, evaluates, and finds fault begins to recede as the brain crosses the threshold into sleep. You do not have to silence that voice by force. You only have to wait for the biology to do what it does. Sleep is not just rest from the world. It is also rest from the version of yourself that never stops watching. Research on the neuroscience of forgiveness distinguishes between two components: decisional forgiveness, which is a conscious choice to relinquish resentment, and emotional forgiveness, in which the negative emotions themselves are gradually replaced by neutral or positive ones. Emotional forgiveness takes time and cannot be forced. But decisional forgiveness, the quiet choice tonight to set down one grievance, one frustration, one catalogue of who did what, is available right now. It does not require the other person to change. It does not require the past to be different. It only requires the recognition that you are the one who has been carrying the weight. And you are the one who gets to set it down. Chronobiology, the study of biological time, has established that every cell in the human body contains its own clock, governed by the expression of so-called clock genes. These cellular clocks are synchronized with each other and with the environment by the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the brain. When sleep is allowed to arrive at its natural time, this synchrony is maintained. The organs, the immune system, the digestive tract, and the brain all move through their nighttime processes in coordinated sequence. Sleep is not one thing. It is a symphony of biological processes that require your stillness to begin. When you lie down and rest, you give the entire orchestra permission to play. Research on what psychologists call the negativity bias, the brain's tendency to weight negative information more heavily than positive, helps explain why difficult thoughts feel so much more insistent than neutral or pleasant ones. This bias is not a flaw. It is an ancient survival adaptation. Organisms that paid more attention to threats survived more reliably than those who did not. But in the context of a safe bedroom, on a night where no threats are present, the negativity bias becomes a kind of false alarm. Knowing this does not make the thoughts stop, but it adds a layer of perspective. The alarm is real. The danger it is pointing to tonight, in this quiet room, is not. One of the most replicable findings in sleep research is the relationship between pre-sleep cognitive arousal, the presence of active, intrusive thoughts at bedtime, and longer sleep onset latency, more nighttime awakenings, and reduced sleep quality overall. The mind that arrives at sleep already running is a mind that must first slow down before sleep can begin. This is not a failure. It is a phase. The mind that is still busy when you lie down is the same mind that will, given patience and a soft environment, begin to slow. It cannot stay at speed indefinitely. Even the most active brain eventually exhales. It is already happening now. Bring your attention to your hands. Notice the temperature of your fingers, the slight weight of each one resting where it is. Now your arms, now your shoulders, now your chest, rising and falling without effort. Every exhale is your body's way of saying, I don't need to carry that. Every inhale is the world offering you something new. You have crossed the halfway point of tonight's journey. The second half is quieter than the first. The facts that are coming are shorter, softer, more like stones skimmed across a still lake than anything the mind needs to hold. Let them land and sink. You are almost there. The brain's reward system, centered on the nucleus accumbens and driven by the neurotransmitter dopamine, is activated not only by external pleasures, but by internal states of resolution and completion. When you allow a difficult day to finally end, genuinely end, by choosing to stop re-engaging with it, the brain registers a form of closure that carries its own small neurochemical reward. Letting go is not merely neutral. The relief you feel when you genuinely release something is a real signal in the brain's pleasure and reward circuitry. Rest is its own reward. encoded in your biology. Research has shown that the brain cannot effectively distinguish between a vividly imagined safe environment and a physically experienced one in terms of its physiological impact. This means that the act of imagining yourself somewhere calm, peaceful, and held, whether a childhood room, a forest, a place where you were once completely at ease, produces real physiological shifts, slower breathing, reduced muscle tension, lower heart rate. Imagination is not escape. It is a clinical tool. The mind you bring to the edge of sleep can be any mind you choose to inhabit. Tonight, you can be somewhere safe. The body will follow. Sleep spindles. Brief bursts of neural oscillation in the frequency range of 12 to 15 Hz occur during stage 2 NREM sleep and are associated with the consolidation of motor and procedural memories. They are also linked to the brain's ability to block out environmental disturbances, protecting the sleeping brain from waking. As you move towards sleep tonight, your brain will begin to generate these spindles. They are among the first signs that the brain has chosen sleep over wakefulness. They are not something you can force. They are something you allow. Like everything about rest, they arrive when you stop standing in the way. The phenomenon of sleep inertia, the grogginess and disorientation that follows sudden awakening from deep sleep, is caused by the rapid reactivation of the prefrontal cortex after a period of deep suppression. During deep sleep, the prefrontal cortex is among the least active regions of the brain. The elaborate machinery of self-monitoring, worry, and evaluation is genuinely offline. This is not metaphor. It is neuroimaging data. The conscious self that works so hard during the day is given a true night off. What rests tonight is not just the body. It is also the inner critic, the planner, and the voice that says it isn't enough. They rest too. Research on post-traumatic growth, the documented capacity for people to develop new strengths, perspectives, and appreciation for life following significant adversity, has identified a key mechanism: the ability to find meaning in difficult experience without requiring it to make sense immediately. Meaning is not always available on the night of a hard day. But meaning-making is a process, not an event, and it happens largely during sleep. In the narrative integration that REM dreaming provides, tonight's hard feelings do not need to resolve tonight. They only need to be carried gently, placed down for now, and allowed to be processed by the sleeping brain that knows how. One of the neuroscience of sleep's most counterintuitive findings is that the brain is not merely resting during sleep, it is deeply active. Certain neural circuits that are suppressed during waking are highly active during sleep. The hippocampus, for instance, replays the events of the day during NREM sleep in a process called memory consolidation. This replay is not random. The brain selects what to consolidate and what to fade. The things that mattered today will be strengthened. The things that were merely noise will diminish. You do not have to decide what is worth keeping. The sleeping brain already knows. The psychological concept of acceptance does not mean liking what is. It does not mean agreeing with how things turned out. It means meeting reality without the additional suffering of wishing reality were otherwise. The distinguished psychologist Carl Rogers described the paradox: when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. The same principle applies to rest. When you stop fighting the fact of being tired, of having needed more than the day provided. of being human in all of its limits. The body can begin the actual work of recovery. What is accepted can heal. What is resisted stays locked. Research on expressive suppression, deliberately concealing or inhibiting emotional expression, shows that it increases physiological arousal even as outward expression decreases. People who suppress emotions during stressful events show higher heart rates, higher cortisol, and impaired memory for the events in question. The body does not forget what the face didn't show. This is why nights can feel so heavy, with what the day required you to hold together. Everything that was kept inside during the hours of functioning is still here, waiting for permission to complete. Right now. Nothing needs to be held together. The door is closed. Whatever you need to feel, you can feel it, and then let it pass. The science of awe, pioneered by psychologists Dacher Keltner and Jonathan Haidt, found that awe reliably reduces self-focused thought and increases a sense of connection to something larger than the individual self. This shift in perspective, from the anxious, self-monitoring mind to a wider and quieter awareness, has been shown to reduce symptoms of anxiety and increase pro-social feelings. You do not need a grand experience to access this. The fact that you are alive, breathing, experiencing consciousness at all, that the neurons in your brain are firing in patterns no one yet fully understands, is genuinely remarkable. You are, right now, a mystery the universe has not yet explained. Research on the sleep patterns of hunter-gatherer societies, populations whose lives most closely resemble the ancestral context of human sleep, has found that sleep was often not a single continuous block, but occurred in two distinct phases, separated by a period of quiet wakefulness. Historian Roger Eckert's research into pre-industrial European texts similarly describes this pattern of first sleep and second sleep as historically normal. What this means is that waking in the night is not necessarily a malfunction. The human body has always had a more flexible relationship with night than modern expectations allow. The pressure to sleep in one perfect unbroken block is historically very new. Studies in cognitive neuroscience have shown that the act of writing a to-do list before bed, specifically recording unfinished tasks and the plan for addressing them, reduces sleep onset latency and decreases intrusive thoughts during the pre-sleep period. The brain's open loops, unfinished tasks, and unresolved concerns create a kind of low-level cognitive hum that interferes with the transition to sleep, externalizing them onto paper signals to the brain that they have been registered and can be set aside. The mind does not need to keep rehearsing what has already been noted. Writing it down is the brain's permission slip for sleep. The orbitofrontal cortex, a region involved in emotional valuation and moral decision-making, is also active in the experience of regret. When the brain simulates what might have been, the road not taken, the word unsaid, the opportunity missed, the orbitofrontal cortex generates a signal of negative affect that functions as a learning tool. Regret, in this sense, is adaptive. It shapes future behavior. But regret that loops without resolution becomes a source of chronic arousal. The biological purpose of regret has been served when it informs a single intention. After that, holding it through the night adds cost without adding knowledge. The lesson has been received. You can set it down. Neuroscientists studying the effects of sleep deprivation have documented a cascade of cognitive and emotional consequences that accumulates across even 2 or 3 nights of inadequate sleep. reduced accuracy in emotional perception, increased reactivity to mild stressors, impaired working memory, and decreased activity in the prefrontal cortex. The exhausted brain is not a less competent version of the rested brain. It is a genuinely different brain. One that processes the world with less precision and more threat reactivity. Every night of rest reverses part of this accumulation. You are not just sleeping tonight. You are restoring the brain that you will need tomorrow to be the person you want to be. The body's inflammatory response, a key component of immune defense, is normally regulated by adequate sleep. During deep sleep, the immune system produces certain cytokines, proteins involved in immune signaling, that are essential for the repair of cellular damage and the maintenance of immune function. Chronic sleep deprivation disrupts this process, leading to elevated baseline inflammation. Rest is not a passive event. It is an active immune intervention. When you sleep tonight, your immune system is doing work it cannot do while you are awake. You are not doing nothing. You are, among other things, healing. Psychological research on coping styles has long distinguished between problem-focused coping, which involves taking action to change the source of stress, and emotion-focused coping, which involves regulating the emotional response to a situation that cannot be immediately changed. Sleep is one of the most effective emotion-focused coping strategies available to humans. It does not require insight, effort, or the presence of a therapist. It is available every night. The wisdom of choosing rest over more striving at the right time is not weakness. It is one of the most sophisticated responses to the human condition that exists. Research on social baseline theory, developed by psychologist James Cohen, proposes that the human brain is fundamentally calibrated for proximity to other people, that being near others of trust is the brain's default assumption of safety, and that isolation requires additional neural effort. This may be why the late-night mind so often reaches for connection. Through memory, through imagined conversation, through the invisible awareness that others are also out there, navigating the dark. Right now, you are not alone in lying awake or in needing rest. The whole world is in different phases of its night. You are part of a larger breathing. Neuroendocrinological research on growth hormone has shown that the majority of the body's growth hormone is released during the first wave of deep slow-wave sleep, typically occurring within the first 90 minutes of sleep onset. Growth hormone is not only relevant to physical growth, it is involved in tissue repair, protein synthesis, fat metabolism, and immune function in adults. The body does its most active physical rebuilding in the earliest hours of sleep. This means that the first hours of sleep you allow yourself tonight are among the most physiologically productive hours of your entire day. What looks like doing nothing is, in fact, the body doing everything. The philosophy of impermanence, most fully articulated in Buddhist thought, but supported by modern psychological research on hedonic adaptation, holds that all states, both pleasant and painful, are transient. What neuroscience has added to this insight is specificity. Research on emotional duration has found that most emotional states, even intense ones, have a physiological half-life measurable in minutes rather than hours. The heaviness of tonight will not be the heaviness of tomorrow morning. The brain does not maintain emotional states at full intensity indefinitely. Chemistry changes. Sleep accelerates the change. Whatever weight this day has placed on you, it is already beginning, in the quietness of this moment, to lighten. Research on the neuroscience of kindness has shown that performing acts of kindness activates the brain's mesolimbic reward system, the same system involved in the experience of pleasure and the anticipation of reward. This finding holds even when the kindness is directed at oneself. The act of choosing not to berate yourself tonight, of allowing yourself rest without earning it through suffering, is a genuine act of kindness toward the organism that has carried you through this day. The brain that is treated kindly is a brain that recovers more completely. Kindness is not just an ethical choice. It is a recovery protocol. Brain imaging studies of long-term meditators have shown that regular practice of mindfulness produces measurable changes in gray matter density in the prefrontal cortex and insula, and reduces cortical thickness in the amygdala. But research also shows that even single sessions of mindfulness practice reduce state anxiety and amygdala activation. You do not need years of practice for tonight to matter. The moment of awareness you are in right now, the choice to be here, listening, releasing, is already a moment of practice. The brain responds to what it experiences in the present. This present, right now, is one of softness. The brain is taking note. Studies of the default mode network, the brain network most active during mind wandering, self-referential thought, and rumination, have found that its activity is suppressed during sleep and greatly reduced during the hypnagogic state. This means that the voice that narrates your life, evaluates your choices, and constructs the ongoing story of who you are, literally goes quiet as sleep arrives. This is not loss. It is relief. The narrative self is essential during the day, but it is not required tonight. In the language of neuroscience, you are allowed to be less defined for a few hours. You are allowed to simply be the breathing, the warmth, the dissolving edge of sleep. Research on sleep across the lifespan has shown that older adults experience less slow-wave sleep and more fragmented sleep architecture than younger adults. A change associated with declines in the slow-wave sleep-promoting glial cells and changes in adenosine receptor sensitivity. But what the research also shows is that the brain adapts. Sleep needs and sleep patterns vary across a lifetime, and the body continues to find ways to restore itself within whatever sleep architecture is available. The sleep that is happening right now, however it comes, is the sleep your body knows how to use. There is no perfect sleep. There is only the rest that is available tonight. And that is enough. Research on psychological safety, the sense that one can be vulnerable without fear of punishment or humiliation, has found that it is one of the most powerful predictors of learning, creativity, and recovery in both organizations and individuals. Psychological safety is not about the absence of challenge. It is about the presence of trust. When the environment signals that it is safe to not know, to be imperfect, to be in process, the nervous system down-regulates its vigilance and opens to the possibility of growth. Right now, in this quiet room, you are in the safest space you have access to. Nothing here requires you to be anything other than what you are. Neuroimaging research has identified what some neuroscientists call the sentinel hypothesis. The idea that during sleep, the brain does not fully disengage from environmental monitoring, but maintains a low-level vigilance, particularly in the hemisphere that receives information from the outside world. This is why you can still hear your name spoken while asleep. Why a smoke alarm will wake you even from deep sleep. Your sleeping brain is never fully unprotected. It watches over you while the rest of you rests. You do not need to stay alert tonight. The brain has an ancient, reliable system dedicated to keeping you safe while you sleep. You can trust it. It has been working for your whole life. Research on closure, the psychological need for definitive answers or final resolutions, has found that people differ significantly in their tolerance for ambiguity and incompleteness. High need for closure is associated with greater difficulty transitioning to sleep, as the mind continues to seek resolution on questions that cannot yet be answered. The neuroscience of wisdom, by contrast, is partly the neuroscience of tolerance for incompleteness. The learned capacity to hold open questions with curiosity rather than urgency. Not everything that began today will resolve tonight. Some questions are meant to be slept on. The answers that come in morning are often clearer, gentler, and more useful than the ones the exhausted mind tries to force right now. Breathe in slowly, and as you breathe out, feel the day moving further away. Not gone, not forgotten, just further, further from the tightness in your chest, further from the list of what still needs doing. The night is doing its work around you and inside you simultaneously. Cells repairing, thoughts sorting themselves, the nervous system recalibrating to a state you cannot manufacture while awake. You didn't have to make any of this happen. You only had to arrive here and stay. And you did. Rest a little deeper now. Let the weight of the facts you've carried tonight begin to settle. They were always here to help you drift. The autonomic nervous system continues to regulate breathing, heart rate, digestion, and immune activity throughout sleep, entirely without conscious direction. You do not have to breathe tonight. The body breathes for you. This has been true every night of your entire life. Every morning you have woken. The body had kept its promises through the hours you were absent. Trust it again tonight. It knows how. Research on emotional granularity, the ability to make fine-grained distinctions among emotional states, has found that people who can precisely identify what they feel experience less emotional intensity overall. Knowing the specific name of a feeling reduces its hold. Tonight, if you can name what you are releasing, tiredness, disappointment, the weight of effort, that naming is already a form of letting go. The more clearly you see it, the more gently it can leave. The cerebellum, long thought to be involved only in motor coordination, has been shown in recent research to play a role in emotional regulation and in the processing of timing and rhythm. The slow, regular rhythm of sleep-conducive breathing activates cerebellar circuits associated with calm motor patterning. Your body already knows the rhythm of rest. It has practiced it every night of your life. The rhythm is still there. You are finding it again now. Studies of restorative justice, processes that focus on healing and repair rather than punishment, have found that the ability to acknowledge harm without endless self-condemnation is associated with better long-term outcomes for everyone involved. This principle applies to the relationship you have with yourself. Tonight, if you made mistakes, they are already in the past. They can be acknowledged, learned from, and then released. Punishment that continues after the lesson has been received serves no one, including you. Research on the neuroscience of compassion fatigue, the exhaustion that comes from sustained caring for others, has shown that it is characterized not by lack of feeling, but by the accumulation of unprocessed emotional material from repeated empathic engagement. Rest is a primary clinical recommendation. Sleep allows the brain to process accumulated emotional experience that compassion fatigue has deferred. If you have been taking care of others today, know that your exhaustion is earned. Your rest is medically indicated, and tonight is already working on your behalf. The suprachiasmatic nucleus, the brain's master clock, communicates with every organ system, coordinating the timing of cellular processes across the entire body. When you rest at the right time, the clock and the body are synchronized. This synchrony is associated with better metabolic health, stronger immune function, and improved mood the following day. Sleeping at the same time each night is not rigid. It is collaboration between you and your biology. Tonight, you are in sync. Research on what psychologists call secure attachment, the internal working model of a reliable, available, and responsive caregiver, has shown that people with secure attachment styles show significantly better sleep quality, less nocturnal wakefulness, and lower pre-sleep arousal. The brain that has learned that comfort is available does not need to stay alert for danger during the night. Attachment security can be cultivated through therapy, through practice, through the repeated experience of being cared for. And you can begin it right now, here, in the simple act of being gentle with yourself. The human brain contains approximately 86 billion neurons, each forming thousands of connections with other neurons. During any given moment of wakeful consciousness, an extraordinary fraction of these connections are active simultaneously. During deep sleep, this activity simplifies dramatically. The brain moves from the complex, high-dimensional activity of wakefulness to simpler, more synchronized oscillations. In deep sleep, the brain thinks in long, slow waves. This simplification is restorative. The complex mind needs its quiet hours. You are one of the most intricate things in the known universe. And right now, you are allowed to be simple. Neurological research on the default mode network has identified a strong correlation between high levels of DMN activity during the pre-sleep period and reports of difficulty falling asleep. The regions most involved are those associated with self-referential processing and autobiographical memory retrieval. In other words, the part of you that is reviewing today and rehearsing tomorrow. As you approach sleep, this network will gradually quiet. You don't need to force it. You only need to stop feeding it new material to work with. Let the day's story pause. The next chapter can wait. The experience of feeling understood, even partially, even privately, even without another person present, activates the ventral striatum and medial prefrontal cortex, regions associated with reward and social warmth. Understanding doesn't require an audience. The quiet act of turning toward your own experience with curiosity, of saying to yourself, yes, this day was hard. This feeling is real. This tiredness makes sense, provides its own neurochemical acknowledgement. You understand yourself, and that is enough to begin to rest. Research in chronotherapy, the use of light, timing, and sleep scheduling to treat mood disorders, has consistently shown that sleep timing affects mood more than sleep duration alone. The hours before midnight carry disproportionate restorative weight for many people due to the alignment of sleep stages with circadian rhythms. The most consistent finding is simpler, Whatever hours of rest you allow yourself, your brain will work with them. The body is not punitive. It takes what it is given and does its best with it. Tonight, it is given this: the lateral habenula, a small brain region, sometimes called the brain's disappointment center, becomes active when outcomes are worse than expected, generating a signal of negative prediction error. Chronic activation of the lateral habenula is associated with depression and anhedonia. During sleep, this region's activity is suppressed. The brain's capacity to be disappointed is temporarily offline. Tomorrow's brain will encounter the world fresh, without the accumulated burden of today's unmet expectations. Sleep is, among other things, a nightly reset of hope. Research on the long-term outcomes of trauma survivors has found that the single most protective factor against the development of post-traumatic stress disorder is not the absence of fear during or after the traumatic event. It is the quality of social connection and perceived support in its aftermath. The brain heals in relationship, and in the absence of another person, it can begin to heal in the relationship it has with itself, through gentleness, through patience, through the act of choosing rest even when the mind wants to stay awake and keep vigil. The vigil is not helping. Rest is. Neuroscientists studying the sleep of marine mammals have found that dolphins and certain whales sleep with one hemisphere of the brain at a time, a phenomenon called unihemispheric slow-wave sleep, allowing them to continue swimming while partially sleeping. This remarkable adaptation points to the brain's deep commitment to finding rest under even the most demanding circumstances. The biological imperative to sleep is among the strongest drives the nervous system possesses. If a dolphin can find sleep in the open ocean, one hemisphere at a time, you can find it here, in the quiet and the warmth, where everything is already arranged in your favor. Brain imaging research has shown that reading or listening to narratives activates the same neural networks that would be active if the described events were happening to the listener directly. This is why story is one of the most effective routes into the brain's relaxation response. It occupies the narrative-building regions with something external, loosening the grip of the internal narrative that generates worry. You have been listening to a story tonight, the story of what the mind carries and what it can release. The story has been entering the brain the whole time. Something in you has heard it. Research on what psychologists call experiential avoidance, the tendency to suppress, avoid, or escape difficult internal experiences, consistently identifies it as a core mechanism in anxiety, depression, and insomnia. The counterintuitive finding of decades of clinical research is that the willingness to experience difficult feelings, to let them be present without fighting them, reduces their duration and intensity. Letting go is not the same as avoidance. It is closer to the opposite. It is the full, unhurried, compassionate meeting of what is here, and then, gently, the choice to be done with it for tonight. The concept of integration, defined by neuropsychiatrist Daniel Siegel as the linkage of differentiated parts into a functional whole, is central to his understanding of mental health, a mind that cannot integrate its experiences, that holds some memories or emotions in rigid isolation from others, generates more suffering than one that has allowed experiences to move through it and find their place. Sleep is integration's most faithful partner. Every night, the dreaming brain weaves the day's experiences into the larger fabric of a life. What felt fragmented today will, by morning, be slightly more continuous. Research on the psychophysiology of laughter has shown that genuine laughter activates the mesolimbic reward system, reduces cortisol, increases endorphin release, and is followed by a period of muscular relaxation and decreased heart rate. If something during this day made you laugh, that moment was a gift the nervous system received. The body remembers kindness. It also remembers joy. When you arrive at sleep, you carry not only the heaviness, but the lightness of the day. Both are yours. Both will be processed tonight. The laughter and the weight, sorted gently while you sleep. The practice of body scan meditation, systematically moving attention through different regions of the body, has been shown in randomized controlled trials to reduce pre-sleep arousal and improve sleep quality in both healthy adults and people with clinical insomnia. The mechanism is partly that attention moved to the body is attention moved away from worried cognition, and partly that gentle, curious attention to the body sends a signal of safety. You have been scanning your body gently tonight, with every fact about breathing and weight and warmth. You have been practicing, without the formal name. Research on resilience across the lifespan has consistently found that the capacity to recover is not fixed at birth or determined solely by genetics. It is built through experience, through the accumulated evidence that difficulty is survivable, that the night eventually gives way to morning, that the body is more capable of healing than the exhausted mind can perceive. You have survived every difficult night you have ever had. Your survival rate is 100%. That is the strongest statistic you carry, and it is yours. Every night, including this one. The transition between wakefulness and sleep involves a gradual withdrawal of consciousness from the peripheral senses. Sounds become muffled. Touch becomes distant. The visual field, even with eyes closed, dims toward absolute dark. This withdrawal is not a loss. It is the body allocating its resources toward the internal work of sleep. As you near the edge of sleep tonight, you may notice these changes beginning. The room feels further away. Thoughts become less attached to each other. Images arrive unbidden. These are the signs. You are very close. One of the final structures to remain active as wakefulness gives way to sleep is the hippocampus, which replays recent memories in a process that transfers them for long-term storage. In a real sense, the last act of your waking brain is remembering, pulling fragments of the day through the circuit one more time before releasing them. And then it lets them go. And then it rests. And then you do too. Research on the physiology of falling asleep has documented the progressive relaxation of muscle tone as sleep onset approaches. Muscles that have been subtly contracted throughout the day, holding posture, managing micro-expressions, maintaining alertness, begin to release, often producing the brief involuntary muscle jerk called a hypnic jerk as the motor system finally lets go. That small startle, if it comes, is not a sign of something wrong. It is the body releasing its grip. It is the last argument of the day, ending. The brain's slow oscillations during deep non-REM sleep, waves of neural activity at approximately 1 Hz, sweep across the cortex in a coordinated pattern that researchers believe is essential for synaptic homeostasis, the gradual scaling down of the synaptic connections that accumulated during the day's learning and stimulation. The day's intensity is literally being turned down. The volume on experience is decreasing wave by wave. Everything that was loud today is becoming quieter. Everything that was sharp is becoming soft. This is the sound of your brain letting go. The science of letting go arrives. In the end, at a simple finding confirmed across neuroscience, psychology, evolutionary biology, and clinical research, the human mind and body were designed to release. The capacity for rest is not something that has to be created or earned or deserved. It is structural. It is ancient. It is yours. Every system of the brain and body is oriented, right now, toward the same goal, the same direction, the same quiet destination that has always been waiting at the end of every day. You are already there. You just have to stop arriving and let yourself be here. You've traveled a long way tonight. 100 facts about the mind that carries and the mind that releases. And somewhere along that path, something shifted. Perhaps it was fact 9. When you learned that sleep strips the sharp edges from difficult memories, that tomorrow's version of today will be softer. Perhaps it was fact 100. When the science arrived at its simplest truth, that rest is not earned. It is structural. It is yours. The journey was not only through the science, it was through you. You are not the only person who arrived here tonight carrying something heavy. Across the world tonight, minds like yours, curious, tired, still trying, are finding their way to the same threshold. Letting go is not a private act. It is one of the most universal experiences the human nervous system has. Every night, billions of brains complete this passage. Tonight, you are part of that. And that means something. Close your eyes one more time, or keep them as they are. The room is here. The warmth is here. The breath is still moving in and out without your help. Everything that needed to be known tonight has been offered. Everything that needed to be felt has been allowed. Now the only task remaining is the oldest and simplest one your body knows how to do. You are very close. Let the last thought you notice be a gentle one, and then let that go too. Perhaps this thoughtful exploration of the mind brought you relaxation, rest, or quiet curiosity tonight. A gentle like and subscribe helps other sleepless souls discover this peaceful space too. It only takes a moment, but it means the world to us. One quiet tap, one sleepy soul at a time. But there's no need to do anything now. Nothing at all. You've traveled far tonight. Through the neuroscience of release, the biology of rest, the ancient architecture of a mind designed to let go. Allow these thoughts to fade now, like ink dissolving into deep, still water, leaving only the cool calm behind. Let your breathing deepen. Let your body feel heavier, as if the earth itself is holding you with a patience that has no end. If sleep comes, let it carry you smoothly, inevitably, into the darkness that has always been safe. If your eyes are still open, the next video is waiting for you. But if they're closed, stay there. Tonight belongs to stillness. Rest well, and remember, the mind that releases is the mind that heals.